Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Yeah, Vrinda Kumari, when are you ready? You can start, Mati.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you. I'll start with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Just 1 second, Prabhuji.
Sure. Yeah, do you want one of us to read so that you can give the overview, or you are doing both? It's okay.
Anything is fine, Prabhuji. If you would like to read, please go ahead. No problem.
Sure. That way you will get some time for the overview, I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Naruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nastiki. Text 36 in first canto 15th chapter. The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, left this earth planet in his self-same form that very day Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. Text 37. Maharaj Yudhishthira was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating and violence throughout the capital, state, home and among individuals. So, he wisely prepared himself to leave home and he dressed accordingly. Text 38. Thereafter, in the capital of Hastinapura, he enthroned his grandson, who was trained and equally qualified as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the seas. Text 39. Then he posted Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, grandson of Lord Krishna, at Madura as the king of Surasena. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhishthira performed a Prajapatya sacrifice and placed in himself the fire for quitting household life. Text 40. Maharaj Yudhishthira at once relinquished all his garments, belt and ornaments of the royal order and became completely disinterested and unattached to everything. Text 41. Then he amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, then mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the 5 elements, and his body into death. Then, as pure self, he became free from the material conception of life. Text 42. Thus, annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he meshed them in one nescience and then absorbed that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. Text 43. After that, Maharaj Yudhishthira dressed himself in torn clothing, gave up eating all solid foods, voluntarily became dumb, and let his hair hang loose. All this combined to make him look like an urchin or madman with no occupation. He did not depend on his brothers for anything, and just like a deaf man, he heard nothing. Text 44. He then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men. to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he lived in that way wherever he went. Text 45. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world, and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected by irreligious practice. Therefore, they decided to follow in the footsteps of their elder brother. Text 46. They all had performed all the principles of religion, and as a result, rightly decided that the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. Text 47 and 48. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. Text 49. Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhasa. Because he was absorbed in thought of Krishna, he was received by the denizens of the Pitraloka planet, where he returned to his original post. Text 50. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husbands. Text 51. The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life, back to Godhead, is fully auspicious and is perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. Thank you, Mate. You can continue, Mate.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Let's start with the prayers. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna-prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanath Swaminiti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna-prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is Canto 1 Chapter 15. Previous to this verse 36, we have seen that this is the conversation between Arjun and Yudhishthir. In previous chapter also we saw that how Yudhishthir is inquiring about Krishna from Arjun in Dwarka, like Krishna in Dwarka, and inquiring about many other things. But how Arjun is not able to answer to his question because he's looking very sad and pale and he had lost all his bodily luster. So he was completely stricken by the feelings of separation from Krishna, and it wasn't becoming possible for him to answer to his like speculative inquiries. So it is also mentioned that how Arjun was choking and not able to speak because his mouth was dry and all those different symptoms he was showing. So Arjun also explained or shared about all the achievements and successes that he had attained by the association, friendship, and the mercy of the Lord Krishna. He shared all those experiences before this. And in previous verse 35, he mentions how Krishna relinquished his body. And along with that, he gives example of a magician. So let's look into this from verse 36. In 36, it explains how Kali was fully manifest at the departure of Sri Krishna. Actually, King Yudhishthir had already started to witness some inauspiciousness, and he had guessed it very rightly that probably it was the time for Krishna to leave for his abode. But Kali affects only those who are in ignorance, because for devotees, it does not matter when he's fully absorbed in Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that when Krishna is just out of our sight, it's like the sun who is away from our sight when the sun sets. But does it mean that the sun has disappeared? No, the sun is present somewhere. Similarly, Lord Krishna is always present. He's just out of our sight. It is mentioned by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that Kali had appeared and affected those with the sleeping intelligence. Kali does not affect those who have discrimination, who are able to discriminate. So, for example, he gives that the thief steals wealth from a sleeping person very confidently, right? But he's afraid to steal from someone who is awake. So similarly, like Kali does not affect the devotees because she's scared or afraid to go closer to them because they are always absorbed in Krishna. So verse 37. This verse explains how King Yudhishthir started to prepare himself to leave home by dressing accordingly due to the influence of Kali. Like all these Kali, bad qualities of Kali are mentioned here: avarice, falsehood, cheating, violence, etc. So there are a few points that we need to know from this verse, like signs of Kali, like how there is increase in all these bad qualities such as diplomacy, cheating, falsehood, which started manifesting from the days of Battle of Kurukshetra, that is mentioned in the purport. And it will still go on with more and more growth in these qualities for 4,700,000 years. And one cannot imagine what will be the situation that time if now itself it's so bad. Second point we can learn is, like mentioned before, for devotees, it does not matter whether it's Kali or anything. So there was no need for Yudhishthir Maharaj to actually leave, because one should not wrongly understand that he was trying to run away because of all inauspiciousness. Yudhishthir Maharaj is a great devotee of Krishna. So the reason why he was leaving, because he could not tolerate the separation from Krishna and he wanted to be in his company. And devotee always wants to be in the company of Krishna. And so he decided to leave home. So one should not misunderstand that Yudhishthir Maharaj was trying to run away from all this inauspiciousness, because for a devotee, auspiciousness, inauspiciousness, it does not matter, everything is the same. Also, he is setting an example for others how they should retire themselves at the right time and hand over kingdom or responsibilities to the next generation, and take vanaprastha and sannyas and dedicate completely in the service of the Lord. So in that way, one need not wait for the Yamaraj to take you forcibly away from your household life. That's what Prabhupada mentions in the purport. So we can do it voluntarily or willingly by becoming detached from all these material activities. And it is also mentioned that he left in appropriate clothing. He did not just like a king or in king's opulent clothing. So this is a little bit about verse 37. Verse 38. 38 explains how King Yudhishthira enthroned King Parikshit as the king, who is his grandson and the son of Abhimanyu and Uttara, who was equally qualified because he was personally trained by him. So Prabhupada says in purport that a question can be raised that why did he rule till the time of King Parikshit? Because people in the world were happy at the time of King Yudhishthir because of his good administration, because there was ample production of natural produce like grains, fruits, milk, minerals, etc. Even we have seen before, like how Mother Earth is happy whenever there is a ruling of a good king, such as even King Bharat and Amrish and many others. So Earth provides ample amount of rain, and that's how people get ample produce, and everyone is happy. So it is a good sign. It is a sign of a good king when everything is auspicious during his ruling of the kingdom. And also, not just that, but everyone was trained to attain the highest goal of life. And what is that? Connecting to Krishna, getting closer to Krishna. And everyone was trained for that. So because of all these qualities, Yudhishthira Maharaj was ruling till the time of King Parikshit. And now it is the time he's handing over it to King Parikshit. So verse 39, King Yudhishthir posted Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, who is the son of Krishna. Aniruddha is the son of Krishna, so he's great-grandson of Krishna. As the king of Shurasena at Mathura, and he accepted renounced order of life. So Prabhupada mentions here 4 orders, such as the Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. Prabhupada again and again reminds us about all these 4 orders of life and 4 occupational divisions, about Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So in any of these occupations, there should be timely change in orders of life. Prabhupada says that last 15 to 20 years prior to death should be devoted to the devotional service to the Lord. And it would be a foolishness to engage oneself all the time in material enjoyment and fruitive activities. Because if mind is absorbed in material activities, even while leaving the body, there is no chance of getting out of material bondage. We have seen example of King Bharat, right? How he was thinking of the deer, and then he got the body of the deer in next life. So whatever you think, you will get that. So if you are absorbed in material activities, you will again get entangled in those activities in your next birth. So we also have examples how Lord Chaitanya took the sannyas, and our Srila Prabhupada also took sannyas timely so that they could preach and spread Krishna consciousness and devote themselves in the service. So these are the real examples of taking sannyas on time. Verse 40. King Yudhishthira renounced his garments, belts, ornaments, and he became completely detached. So it shows how one needs to purify oneself of all these material contaminations to become the associate of the Lord. One cannot become associate of the Lord with the contaminated state of mind, where one is attached to one's property, wealth, children, relatives, etc. So we have seen it in examples again, the King Bharat, like who couldn't attain the Lord because he was attached to deer. So this is again related to the same topic as we discussed before. And also it's mentioned that sannyasis wear the saffron cloth that indicates freedom from all attractive material attachments. So it also teaches how one should be free from all material designations, what Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport very nicely, that we have to be free from all material designations of family, society, country. And Prabhupada gives example of people who die in national consciousness, such as soldiers and those who are fighting for the country. And they are very much appreciated for that. But you see how King Yudhishthir, he is setting a best example where one can understand that one should not be in any national consciousness, but Krishna consciousness. And he's also compared as to be on the same level as Lord Ram in purport. So next is verse 41. How King Yudhishthir slowly made himself free from material contamination. he combined all his senses into his mind, and then his mind into life. That's what is mentioned in the translation. His mind into life, or prana, then prana into breathing, or apana, and apana along with 5 elements into death, and death into body. So this is the process he was following to get rid of all this material contamination and think only about Krishna, get closer to Krishna. In simple words, if you have to explain. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains Yudhishthir, like Arjuna, attempts to stop the senses from acting externally. He offered all the senses into the mind, because senses are dependent on the mind, right? And he offered the mind into prana, because mind is dependent on life, or prana. So he gave the mind to the prana. He gave his senses to the mind, and he gave the mind to prana, or life. Actually, it is impossible to offer them, because senses are independent, right? When he gave, it also shows when he gave voice and other senses and mind and prana in offering, we should understand that he also offered the actions, speaking, thinking, willing, etc. So he gave up all this, and he offered death into the body. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that his meditation was, "O death, you belong to the body." So he was aware of the knowledge of the soul, that the soul never dies. So it shows how Yudhishthir was getting ready to give up the body, which is material and temporary. Verse 42, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur again explains this verse in simple words, that he offered, in the further process or steps, he offered the body into the 3 gunas, 3 material modes of nature, right? And the 3 gunas into Prakriti. And he offered everything into the Jiva, and offered Jiva into indestructible Krishna. This is what is given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So King Yudhishthir offered everything to their respective controllers. Like we have seen, senses to the mind, then mind to the prana, or life. And he distanced himself completely from all those relationships by handing over the kingdom to King Parikshit and Vajra. So this sense of freedom from material relations makes one free to act as a servitor of the Lord, even when one is in the material world. This is what is given in the purport. It's so beautifully explained by Srila Prabhupada. He says that the senses of freedom from material relations makes one free to act as the servitor of the Lord, even when one is in the material world. Even when you're present in the material world, you can be free from all these material contaminations or relations. And that makes you free. That helps you to act as the servitor of the Lord. And this stage is called Jivan Mukta stage, or liberated stage. So this is a little bit about verse 42. 43. After all this process, then King dressed himself in torn clothes. He stopped eating, and he went into the stage where he was not listening to anyone, or not much caring about the prestige of the kingdom or family. He had become fearless. He wasn't dependent on any of the brothers, but only Krishna. This is what happens to devotees when they are only dependent on Krishna and no one else. So this was the state King Yudhishthir was displaying when one is completely dependent on Krishna. Yeah, that's it. This is about verse 43. 44, then King started towards north, where his forefathers and great souls had already gone there before, and no one returns from there. So we have seen how even Vidur and Dhritarashtra, they also left the home, and he did not wait for his brothers. How Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, right? Manmana bhava mad bhakto. So be completely absorbed in me and you will surely come to me. And that's what King Yudhishthira is showing. He was completely being absorbed in Krishna. And there is no doubt that he will definitely go back to Krishna. And this is what, it's like an example he's setting, how we can also act by being completely absorbed in Krishna. So, verse 45, the brothers of King Yudhishthira also followed in the footsteps of their elder brother. And they had always they had done that. They had always obeyed their elder brother and followed in his footsteps. Also, they were aware of the goal of life. So they also timely retired from family life and engaged in self-realization. But we see in the material world how people retire from their work and they don't know what to do after retirement, being retired from their work. So they just want to enjoy life because that's what they think, that they worked so hard all their lives. So now it's time to relax and enjoy. They really don't know what to do. They keep doing some few things that gives temporary happiness. Again, they are in search for another activity which gives them happiness, and then keep on doing different activities, but it's all temporary. But Pandavas are showing how one can follow in the footsteps of acharyas without, considering all this dharma, artha, kama, moksha as the ultimate goal of life. So, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that he says to Arjun, right, because you are my friend, I give you this confidential knowledge. And then he talks about this Manmana Bhava Bhakta. And Pandavas were intelligent enough to follow these instructions of the Lord. So how intelligently they followed in the footsteps of King Yudhishthira, and they also were ready to achieve the goal of life, to get completely absorbed in Krishna. So verse 46, here it's mentioned that one should meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna at the end of life. And why Pandavas were able to do it? Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that persons who have performed pious activities in past lives and in this life can engage in my service with determination. This is the verse which is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. So Pandavas were able to do it because of this, that they had performed pious activities in past lives and also in this life. And that's why they could completely engage in the service of Krishna with determination. Although they had performed dharma, artha, kama, moksha perfectly, they knew that these were endless. And so they willingly decided to concentrate on the lotus feet of Krishna by understanding the goal of life. So Pandavas decide to completely get absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. So 47, 48 verses explain how they all attain the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by Lord Narayan and Lord Krishna. So they all attain the spiritual sky. So this spiritual sky cannot be attained if one is absorbed in material conception of life. Like Srila Prabhupada is again stresses this point. And how we all saw how Yudhishthira was trying to control senses and everything else, so he could concentrate on the lotus feet of Krishna, and all his four brothers also followed the same. So Prabhupada gives references of many commentaries here by acharyas, such as he says that Srila Jiva Goswami mentions that a person who is above all these three modes of nature, that means who is in transcendental level, when one is above these three modes of nature, is at the transcendental level, and then one can reach the highest perfection without change in body. And Srila Sanatana Goswami also is mentioned there. He mentions that one who has understood the instructions of a spiritual master and under his guidance, who has become twice born Brahman, that guidance which he has taken from his spiritual master matters even for going back home, back to Godhead, even without change in body. So this is the perfection of life. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he has mentioned the verse 14.26. I'll just read the translation of that verse, that one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So as mentioned by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, how one is at the level of transcendental level, after they are, when they are beyond these three modes of nature. And also what is meant by without change of body is, we saw even Krishna return to his abode without a change of body, right? It means that they attain the dham, spiritual dham, in their same spotless bodies, devoid of their demigod expansions, right? Such as Yamaraj for Yudhishthir, who came, who was the expansion of, direct expansion of Dharma, right? He came from Dharma, who is Yamaraj. Like we know that demigods come back to material world again, right? And the Pandavas were the expansions of these devatas. Like Yudhishthir is the son of Dharmaraj or Yamaraj, and Arjuna came from Indra, and Bhima was the son of Vayu. But they did not give up their bodies, although they were the expansions of these demigods. So they went back in their same bodies. So 49 talks about Vidur, who leaves body at Prabhas by being absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. So he was received by the denizens of Pitraloka, where he went to his original post. So the original post of Vidura was, he was one of the administrative demigods in charge of Pitraloka, who is none other than Yamaraj. This is what is mentioned in purport by Prabhupada. So we can see Yudhishthira was the expansion of Dharma or Yamaraj, and Vidura was the incarnation of Yamaraj. So what's the difference? Expansion means the direct one, and incarnation is the indirect one. So Yudhishthira directly came from Dharma, and Vidura came as an incarnation of Yamaraj. Like he came as the son of Vyasadeva, right? So for example, we can see how Sri Radha and Lord Balaram are expansions of Krishna. They came directly from Krishna, and Lord Narsimha, Varaha, they're all incarnations of the Lord because they came from Vishnu. So there is a story related to this pastime, how Yamaraj was cursed by Manduka Muni, which is mentioned by Prabhupada here shortly, that Yamaraj was cursed by Manduka Muni. So once upon a time, that the police caught some thieves who were actually hiding in the hermitage of Manduka Muni. And the constables, the police, they arrested all the thieves, and they also arrested Manduka Muni, thinking that he was also involved in all these activities. So they specifically punished the Muni to death by being pierced with a weapon, because they thought that he's the Muni and how he could do it. So he was specially punished to death. So when he was just about to be pierced, that king got to know that this is what is happening. So he stopped it. He stopped that act. And because he knew that Manduka Muni is a great Muni, and there is nothing like that he could do. So he personally begged Muni's pardon for the mistakes of the people or the thieves who had made. And then Muni actually goes to Yamaraj, he who actually prescribes the destiny of the living beings, right? So Yamaraj, Muni asked him why this is all happened to me. And Yamaraj replied that that Muni actually in his childhood had pierced an ant with a sharp tool. So for that reason, he was put into this difficulty. So Muni was actually shocked, because he thought that it is not fair that he was punished for his childish act, right? It was a very innocent act, childish act. So he cursed Yamaraj that you become a Shudra, And this Shudra incarnation of Yamaraj is known as Vidur, the Shudra brother of Dhritarashtra and Maharaj Pandu. So Vidura had displayed these devotional activities very sincerely throughout his life. He was always able to remember Krishna. And because of all these devotional activities, he could wash away all that curse which he had got from Manduka Muni. So actually, Vidura was not a Shudra. He just played the role of a Shudra for around 100 years. And he's actually the incarnation of Yamaraj, who is one of the Mahajans actually. And what Mahajans do, that it is the duty of Mahajans to preach the cult of devotion to people, right? And to the world. So Vidura was also able to do that with Dhritarashtra at the end of his life. Like we all know how he preached Dhritarashtra to leave everything, and how he was being dependent on his sons, even in this life. So just leave everything and go. And how Dhritarashtra listens to his instructions and he follows. So Yamaraj is also known to punish the wrongdoers, and that's why everyone is scared of him. But Prabhupada says that devotees don't have to be scared of Yamaraj. So the difference between Pandavas and Vidura, which is mentioned by Prabhupada in the purport, is that Pandavas are eternal associates of the Lord, and whereas Vidura is one of the administrative demigods in charge of Pitraloka, who is none other than Yamaraj. So this is a little bit about Vidura, how he also attained the perfection of life by thinking about Krishna and being absorbed in Krishna. And he left his body at Prabhas. So verse 50 mentions how Draupadi and Subhadra also follow the same path as their husbands, who were left behind by them. But actually husbands had not told their wives that they were doing this, and they were just left behind. But Subhadra and Draupadi, they were completely aware of this knowledge. That's why they could follow this path, and they also attained the same results. So Srila Prabhupada says in purport that when a plane is flying, he gives an example, like when a plane is flying and it is in danger, only the people in that plane have to take care of it, right? Nobody else can do anything. Not any other plane can do anything or something like that. So even in the flight, we have seen, right? They announced that first, in the time of emergency, first you help yourself and then you can help others. Similarly, at the end of one's life, one only has to help oneself. No one else can do anything. So it is an independent journey of everyone, and it needs to be from one's heart and done willingly. And they also both concentrated their minds on Vasudev, and they attained the same results, Draupadi and Subhadra. And they also achieved the Lord in the same body. That's what is mentioned here. And the last verse, 51, it mentions the glories of hearing the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees with faith. One when hears this pastime of Pandavas leaving their bodies and going back home, back to Godhead, how one gains devotional service to the Lord, and that is the highest perfection of life. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that when we hear these pastimes of devotees of the Lord and the Lord himself from Srimad Bhagavatam, which are absolute in itself, one actually is associating with the Lord and his devotees directly. So hearing is very important, which will take one back home, back to Godhead. It has that much potency. So we are actually directly associating with the Lord and his devotees. So we have many examples of hearing, like the sages of Naimisharanya were asking questions to Sutta Goswami, right? They are hearing how faithfully they are hearing and submissively hearing from Sutta Goswami. Even Arjuna heard Bhagavad Gita from Krishna by surrendering himself with faith. And Parikshit Maharaj heard Bhagavatam from Shukadev Goswami. Rupa Goswami heard from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we know how hearing with faith is important. And Srila Prabhupada has mentioned about the glories of hearing again and again in many books, in many purports. and how we need to follow the same and hear from our acharyas in this disciplic succession by following in their footsteps. So the last verse talks about glories of hearing. So this is a little bit about these verses from verse 36 to 51. I'll stop here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to serve you all. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Prabhupada ki jai. So for obeisance to all the devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kupasindubhya vacha paditanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much, Madhuri, again for a wonderful session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna Prabhu.